Greetings and welcome once again to my new calculus channel. My name is John Gabriel. Today is Saturday, the 30th of August. We're almost at the end of August. Okay, let's leave those things aside. Now, what I'd like to do here is I would like to talk about a comment and extend that comment into the main topic of my uh, video, which, my dear friends, is new math or just bad math. Now, those of you who are old enough will know that back in the 1950s and 60s, there was a space race competition between the US and the Soviet Union. And the Soviets made it into space first. So the idiots who were competing with the Soviets, naturally, a lot of them were Republicans like Nixon and the others, and had people like the current Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, in power. Um, don't get me wrong. I think the system, the Department of Education needs to go. It's bad, but not for the reasons that this current U.S. administration is saying. There are other reasons. Anyway, this this malady started in the 1950s when they were trying to figure out a way to catch up with the Soviets. They didn't really need to catch up. They simply needed to invest more time in developing the technology to send uh, a man to space. And that's what they did. So those who actually did the research, now remember again, they're doing research. These are the 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 brilliant PhDs. I'm joking, of course. Hardly any of them have three brain cells. Never mind brilliance. These are the ones that went out and looked at how the Soviets were educating the students. And they thought, wow, this is something we're not teaching our kids. We're not teaching them uh, Cantor's set theory, Peano's crap axioms, Frege's delusional ideas about numbers, and other stuff. So this commentary here says, many years ago, a journalist made the point that bad ideas don't go away until everyone who believed in them is dead. Now, unfortunately, many ideas like Marxism and Freudianism have proved extremely durable. Okay, so we can probably say the same thing of those fake mathematicians, Cantor, Peano, Frege, and others. So they began to question the set theoretic approach. And, well, some current mathematicians have begun to question the set theoretic approach, not the ones back then. And they usually wait until they're near retirement. And there's a good reason for that, by the way. And the reason for that is the fact that they'll be excommunicated, lose their tenures, and be kicked out of the mainstream community if they dare say anything against the god of set theory, whom I call the father of all mainstream mathematical cranks, George Cantor. People like David Hilbert, that ultra moron who pushed Cantor's delusional theories of infinity. Okay, so this person here says when I was in secondary school in the 1960s, they were already pushing the set theory on kids. And his final comment is it's part of why innumeracy is so rampant. So rampant. Okay, he's dead right. Okay, well, he's actually live right, but I share those sentiments exactly. So a lot of you won't know what this new math story is about, but it's very similar to Emperor Trump's tariff story. So, tariffs are not illegal, but they're an act of economic war. Okay, usually most wars start off economically, real wars I'm talking about, people really beginning to kill each other. Now, this is very sad because I've seen the thing when I used to teach in the United States. Um, Students are given Venn diagrams, they're taught the distribution properties, the association properties, but they can't even tell you what 7 times 6 is, okay? Or 9 times 8, or what does arithmetic mean? Because really, arithmetic is the most important part of mathematics. Without it, you don't have number. By the way, you're not going to know this, but arithmetic came long before number. It just wasn't called arithmetic. Okay. So in one of my articles called Gabriel Arithmetic Without Numbers, I've renamed it to geoarithmetic, and you can do all the operations of arithmetic perfectly without piano drivel like the successor function and his fake axioms. You know, those zero is a number axiom, piano axiom one, and the successor of zero, um, etc. I don't even remember the axioms by heart, but there are a lot of crap. There are 5 of them, and you can look them up on the internet. So mainstream mathematicians, they're not mathematicians, sphincters, but they have based their entire new foundations, they're not foundations, they're garbage based on beliefs, on the crap of people like Cantor, Piano, Frege, and others. I'm just going to turn this off so that I get better reception on the mic. Now, what is the new math? So, the new mathematics basically was a change in the way mathematics was taught in American schools. It wasn't a temporary change, by the way. It was a permanent. Well, it was a temporary change in the way it was taught in European countries and elsewhere, but it was a permanent change in the US. I mean, you've always seen, since this was installed, teaching of sets and Venn diagrams. Some of the stuff is actually useful. I mean, finite set theory, yeah, may have some uses, but is it mathematics? Not really. It's not really mathematics, okay? Has nothing to do with mathematics. Mathematics is the abstract science of measure and number. So now read this wiki article carefully because actually it's pretty well written. It says more specifically, elementary school arithmetic beyond single digit makes sense only on the basis of understanding place value. That's that's actually false uh, in the sense that mathematically it's untrue, but in terms of the way mathematics was taught in the US, it's true. Okay, so because teachers didn't understand place value, they didn't understand radix systems. I mean, even lecturers don't. Today, lecturers don't understand place value. They say things like 0.333 followed by an ellipsis is equal to a third, and 0.999 is equal to 1, and they uh, identify different objects as the same thing. So, for example, 0.333, which is not a number, it's shorthand for a series, suddenly is the same object as the limit of that series, which is a third. Okay, so they're very confused. They're very, very, very off track. They do not understand arithmetic, and arithmetic is the basis of mathematics. So then, in order to make it more challenging, they introduced something called abstract algebra. Now, the very topics you'll deal with in abstract algebra are things like uh, equivalence relations. Um, you'll deal with vector spaces, set theory, Boolean logic, etc. So some of the stuff is useful, but the most part of it is just nonsense. Okay, so so these efforts that started in the 1960s took the United States, which was in first place in terms of mathematical ability. Okay, they were number one in terms of kids knowing how to do mathematics. Today, they're almost last. Okay. And why? Because of their the idiot researchers they have, the nincompoops that are in charge of the education department. So the one thing Donald Trump is doing right is he's getting rid of the department. Not for the reasons that, well, the reasons that he thinks are not exactly the correct ones, but yes, it's a good idea to get rid of the education department and let states decide how they ought to teach their children. Um, the new math was toxic. Back then, it's toxic now. It will always be toxic. Well, first of all, because it's not math, okay? And second of all, because it doesn't lead to understanding. For example, in order to buttress set theory, mainstream math academics have had to produce a lot of decrees, okay? A lot of rules and decrees. For example, saying things like the empty set is a subset of all sets, and there's a reason for that. And things like the set of all sets that do not contain themselves. So they had to spend a lot of time creating something called axioms. And these were done by a couple of hundred years ago by morons like Zermelo Fraenkel and his colleagues. Okay, I don't know who else was involved. You can look all these things up on the internet or on ChatGPT, which it's pretty reliable for the most part. So please, people, let me encourage you to study mathematics, not anti-mathematical drivel. You do not need to complete a math degree. First of all, it's not only a waste of money, which will place you in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for the rest of your life. Okay, so don't do a BSc in mathematics. In fact, it used to be 3 years long, now it's 4 years long. And probably the only useful parts of it are the calculus and maybe the linear algebra. Everything else in a BSc degree, like metric spaces, real analysis, oh, especially real analysis, by the way, it's that topic based on a mythical concept called a real number. Doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form, and its originators such as Dedekind and Cauchy and all the other idiots, Frege, didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So stick to what I'm telling you and learn the basics because that is what is going to make you competent in mathematics. You won't, for example, rely on a calculator as much as you do now to calculate a simple percentage. I mean, you take an American high school graduate and ask them to calculate, let's say, 10% of, well, maybe that's an easy one. Let's say 5.4% of $12. And they'll battle to do that without a calculator. Okay? So, and the calculator is another story why mathematics has, in the US, has gone downhill so fast. There are several reasons, but this is one of the main reasons, this so called new math. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll place some useful links that you should study in order to become proficient in mathematics in the details section. Click like, and you can also contribute to my efforts by becoming a members only subscriber. It'll only cost you a cup of coffee a month, €4.99, and it'll help me enjoy a cup of coffee now and again, which I can scarcely afford. So that's pretty much it. I'm John Gabriel. This is New Calculus Channel. Till next time.